Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Project Infinite podcast, the podcast covering the infinite and ever-expanding multiverse of fandom, from movies, comics, TV shows, video games. We got you covered, and this week, it's a more fun version of the podcast.
Yeah, this isn't the Project Infinite podcast. This is the more fun version of the Project Infinite podcast.
I'm Rob. I'm here, as always, with Court, and so Spider-Man No Way Home got re-released over the weekend with 11 new minutes of footage, and, They got us.
See it.
They got us.
Yep.
But we thought, it would be a good opportunity to not just revisit this movie and see if, our rose-colored nostalgia goggles kind of clouded our original kind of thoughts on the movie. I thought that would be a good time for that. And then kind of just a larger discussion on movies going and cinemas in general and where the direction of that is headed. So... with a movie of this magnitude being reinserted into theaters over what is notoriously a slow weekend in the movie-going world, we thought it would be a good time to have that conversation. So that's what we're going to do. So we'll get to that. But before that, we have a little bit of news to talk about. Certainly not as much as we've had in past weeks, but we do have some Warner Brothers news, of course.
What else is new?
Because just something's always going on over there, and they have passed word down that after an illustrious 2-year run, DC Fandome is no more. There will not be a DC Fandome next year. For those of you who I guess maybe hadn't seen it or hadn't heard of it, it's essentially like their version of Marvel Showcase or a D23, as it were. It's that, but just for DC, not even limited to the TV shows or the movies. They talked about comics. They talked about various content creators and art, and it's kind of a shame that we're not going to be doing this again. Yeah,
you got to think you were going to see some footage from The Flash specifically was probably what they were probably going to debut here. Maybe some talks about Peacemaker 2, the second season, probably some stuff about Gotham Knights. We were going to get a whole bunch of stuff, and I mean just the state of DC Comics. So that's what we talked about, I think, when we found out about this a couple of days ago. The unfortunate nature is the other things that are suffering, and this is a bigger byproduct of the state of Warner Brothers at the moment and what their decision making looks like, and this is a casualty of that, as much as Batgirl is and Fandome's gone. So I used to love Fandome. The first one I was off the whole day. The first one, yeah. Oh, it was great. It was like you got to see for me personally, I got to see what was new for DC Comics and like the big event that's going on right now. That was pretty cool. You got to see, we got the first Batman trailer. I believe we got the Suicide Squad trailer that day too. Like just so many great things were happening that day, and it really put them on the map that like, look at our new DC content, and both of those movies were incredible. So they had something in their pocket, and it's just, I'm utterly concerned at this point of what Warner Brothers, specifically DC, is going to look like, because before it was moderate concern because it's still a company that's had movies that have made $1 billion even in some cases, but now this is just straight up concern that they can only release 2 movies this year and they can't spend cost anywhere, and this is what we're seeing from it. Yeah,
casualties just across kind of the entire company, as far as, we talked a few weeks ago about the merger with HBO Max and Discovery, all the projects that were being scrapped because of that, notwithstanding the whole Batgirl saga, everything that's going on with The Flash, and then the news that came out last week that they're only pushing Black Adam and Don't Worry Darling, both of which have their own kind of issues to sort out. It feels like Black Adam's the most stable out of everything that they're doing right now, and I don't think that's an accident, because, say what you want about The Rock, but, like, he typically has his ducks in a row when it comes to, his films.
Right, and that's something that we're going to talk about when we address the kind of the state of movie going, and The Rock is somebody that definitely has a stake in that, if you want to believe that or not, because we talk about these huge stars that expand just the movie, and it's an ideal that you want to talk about the 70s and 80s, and I don't want to jump the gun too much, but the idea of the movie star was so much more prevalent versus now it's people that aren't keen to that are coming over. The other movie that Warner Brothers is releasing is Don't Worry Darling, with a man that was in a boy band before this and now is the main male lead in your movie. So times have changed, and the way that movie going and movie making is changed. So The Rock is definitely held on to that accord, and he's gonna run with it and try to get this movie as much money. I do feel a little bit of pressure for him too, because you got to think that they probably told him like, you're our last shot for like possibly the next couple of years for this. Like, this might be it. If this doesn't go well, then we can be looking at an all-out reboot for everything. So
yeah, it feels like for the first time in a long time when it comes to kind of The Rock's career, maybe the first time ever in his career, that maybe to a lesser degree, perhaps his insertion into Fast and Furious, because that was also kind of not a dying brand at the time, but it definitely felt like his appearance in that first one, the Fast Five, definitely gave that franchise a shot in the arm.
It's funny because that's, in my opinion, the best Fast and Furious movie. I think Fast Five is. I think it's the best told. It's the one it's got solid stakes in that movie, and it's like, it was finally like, it felt like the first one outside of like the first couple that felt in the realm of actual realism. And I mean, The Rock being there helps it, because not only are you dealing with that, you're getting The Rock, you're getting this huge megastar on top of that to kind of bolster your franchise with Vin Diesel. Even if they have their disagreements and don't like each other, it's working for just getting butts and seats. Yeah,
so it's going to be really interesting. You know, we talked ad nauseum about how we know that he's really gonna, and has been putting his all. Oh my gosh, he was
dressed as Black Adam and descended upon the crown like Homelander in The Boys for Comic-Con. So he's gonna pull out every bell and whistle he can to get this movie as much money as it can. I'm concerned. I'm a little concerned because the one thing, and again, this is something that we're gonna talk about, it's the quality that I'm kind of concerned that, like, what's this movie gonna look like? What is this movie actually about? So that idea of the Justice Society, I thought from the jump was a really cool idea. We get to see them in live action on the big screen, not the small screen for Stargirl, but I don't know if he can pull this one off. And this just goes to the bigger plague, which is holding back Warner Brothers. So
yeah. So on the flip side of that, we do have some Marvel news.
We always do this. It's always bad Warner Brothers news, and then Marvel just doing good for themselves.
Just going steady.
Going steady.
So despite the She-Hulk twerking controversy, Marvel's still going strong.
I thought we were going to leave that out.
Just in passing, I just felt like I'd mention it. But Ben Kingsley is returning to the Marvel Cinematic Universe as, obviously, Trevor Slattery, a.k.a. Not the Mandarin.
Not the Mandarin.
He will be joining the cast of
He named me after an orange.
He'll be joining the cast of the not soon to come, but eventually coming Wonder Man show.
Yep. I'm for it, because I think this show's being marketed as like this, again, another comedy, like this LA type of comedy. I'm going to put my house on it that She-Hulk might show up in this show too.
Because that show takes place in LA.
Right, yeah. Like, this is going to be like a play on, like, you know, live action superheroes. I think just the way that She-Hulk's kind of like a play on this current state of like how we consume these projects coming out. So I'm excited. I think if the rumor is true and Henry Goulding is playing Wonder Man, that's a great casting. So this show could be fun. I also heard the rumor that Evan Peters is going to get like his mind rewritten, and then he's going to be Ralph Boner in this show. So I just think it's going to be another like no harm, no foul show. Like, I think you're going to get your main plot kind of, you know, getting developed more, and like shows like Ironheart's probably going to give a lot. She-Hulk is doing both. If like, whether you want to talk about it or not, it's doing both. But at the same time, She-Hulk's just relax, just have some fun. It's a comedy. I didn't want to talk about it, but here we are talking about it.
Yeah, it's hitting all the notes that it needs to. Tatiana Maslany is tremendous.
She's so good.
She's great. It's like people are expecting too much still out of these Disney Plus shows.
I thought we learned.
Yeah. I guess, you know, it's just because people still haven't separated the idea that all of these things are different and different genres, and they don't necessarily have to lead. Some will lead to bigger overarching things, such as Loki, and then some won't, such as this. Yeah. And, you know, to a degree, Moon Knight wasn't exactly a massive kind of overarching story.
We had the argument, or I at least had the argument, that what if Moon Knight never even happened? Like, that show never happened, and like wherever we see him next, that's going to be the actual origin of Moon Knight, and that was all in his head. We don't know.
Insane.
I'm just saying, there was a giant like kaiju fight in Egypt and nobody said anything. We just got the fact that Tiamat got frozen addressed in She-Hulk, so who knows what's going on.
Addressed in She-Hulk of all places.
That's one of my favorite things about She-Hulk, is everything's so... That's the state now. Everything's normal. It doesn't matter.
There's a B-plot revolving around a shape-shifting Asgardian woman pretending to be Meg Thee Stallion.
Yeah. Hilarious.
It's great.
Just, if you learn to have a little fun, it's hilarious.
Yeah.
Not everything has to be Iron Man 1.
Which, yeah, also, you know, that wasn't necessarily the most serious thing in the world.
Right. Yeah, let's just have a little fun.
Yeah, for real. Everyone relax.
You'll get your serious projects when you get your serious stuff. Like Moon Knight was pretty serious.
Yeah, and you know, assumedly you're gonna get that based on what we've heard about Ant-Man Quantumania. It's gonna have some pretty high stakes.
You mean when Ant-Man dies?
We'll see.
I was wrong about Wong, so I got to get one. Wasn't I wrong about something before that?
Probably.
I'm wrong about a lot of things. I'm not going to be wrong about Ant-Man, though. I love you, Paul Rudd, but this is it. You don't go against Jonathan Majors and live from that.
Possibly, yeah.
Possibly.
And then the last bit of news is just some Game of Thrones related news. So obviously House of the Dragon is going strong. 2 episodes in. People are really digging it, which for good reason, because it's really good. But the co-showrunner, Miguel Sapochnik, is departing the show after season 1, citing kind of just burnout, essentially.
Yep.
And we talked about that a few weeks ago with the, what was the guy's name? Jordan, what was his name? Superman and Lois.
Oh, yeah,
Jordan Elsas.
Right.
Yeah. We talked about, these higher profile people being more open and more willing to step away from their craft to take care of their mental and physical well-being. So he has left the show he will be leaving the show after season 1 and being replaced by Alan Taylor, who himself is no stranger to the Game of Thrones universe, directed some very, very highly regarded episodes. Not, for example, the final 2 episodes of season 1, notably the episode where Ned Stark has his head chopped off at the end of season 1.
Don't fall in love with the main characters.
Yeah, so he's directed some pretty highly regarded episodes of Game of Thrones, and have no doubt that he'll do a good job. Sapochnik is staying on as an executive producer of the show, so he'll still have his hands on it in some form or fashion. And then the other bit of news, or I don't suppose it's news, I suppose it's a rumor, but it's a strong one, that Elizabeth Olsen could potentially be joining the cast of season 2. She's
getting her feet wet.
Yeah, expanding from one fandom to the other, as actors do sometimes.
Yep.
We've seen it. We're seeing it with Matt Smith right now, who's done it. And I would think we've spoken quite highly of her talents. Talking about WandaVision, talking about Multiverse of Madness, how good she is. She was really kind of the standout of that film.
She's playing a serial killer now.
Yep, she's playing a serial killer now, and
you got to get one of those in your bag to officially be a great actor. So.
Yeah, and I think she'd be a welcome addition to this show.
Sure, she's got that just ancient vibe to her. I don't know how to explain it.
Yeah,
she's like timeless. She can be caught in any time period and it can work.
Yeah,
just like Anya Taylor-Joy has that same thing.
Yeah, I agree. So I think that would be really good if she joined the cast, because it doesn't seem like the show is slowing down.
Absolutely not.
It's episode 3 is out tonight. We're recording this on a Sunday this week.
Oh, you spoiled it. The more fun version takes place on Sundays.
So yeah, I think I did see something that fantasy fans are kind of living their best life right now.
Yeah, this is they're hitting the stride right now.
So you have House of the Dragon, you have the recently released Rings of Power that I'll talk about later, and then you have The Sandman, which we talked about last week. Man. Yeah, it's really a high time for fantasy media right now.
I watched episode 6 again. You could just throw it on anytime.
Yeah,
and it'll still hit.
Yeah. Oh God, it's so good.
I'll meet you here in 100 years.
But yeah, so let's move on to Spider-Man No Way Home. So we have talked about this movie at length, ad nauseum, in the past. You might remember our 3-week build-up to this movie.
This movie took a month of our lives away.
You might remember our 2 separate episodes that were strictly on Spider-Man No Way Home trailer breakdowns.
Yep. The race I had to get here when the second trailer dropped was absolutely insane.
And then we had the film itself
Yeah.
when it came out, and we talked at length about it, and we both quite liked it at the time. And so the more fun stuff version edition released, and there were some concerns that this was going to be an Avengers Endgame re-release situation, where there was unfinished scenes just thrown at the end of the movie.
Reginald Val Johnson was going to be in it.
But no, this was a legitimate extended version of the film. And I guess the first question I would have is, did this movie still stack up from when we saw it back in, was it December?
Yeah. So about 9 months later almost.
Yeah.
Full calendar, baby.
Yeah.
The first half does not. It really does not. And it's something that I really want to I really want to dive into it, because the first half feels hollow. It genuinely does. And the second half, it still does. The second half hits. However, I do have a couple issues, but I'm going to save it when we talk about the state of movie going. It doesn't matter that I think that. It doesn't diminish anybody else's feeling about the movie, and you shouldn't let that happen.
Yeah, I agree. I think I walked away with it much of the same. The first roughly half until you get to the confrontation in the apartment complex is kind of uneven. But despite that, I will say that, much of what was in this extended version bolsters the first half of the movie.
Yeah, it does.
Some transitional scenes that were clearly cut out of the movie for either time purposes or pacing purposes, I think actually helped the first half a bit. And, I made the joke to you after we walked out, like, the movie was already 2.5 hours. You might as well have just left that stuff in and just let it run at that point.
It wasn't anything drastic. I mean, the one scene you probably could have left out was maybe the scene where he's in the school and Hannibal Buress is telling him to climb the wall.
Hilarious scene, though.
Oh my god. Hannibal Buress is much more rounded out as the teacher.
He gets some more
It's
character
funny
development.
because J.B. Smoove and, what was their main teacher's name?
I forget.
That was in The Incredible Hulk. That's the same character. They got a lot of shine in Spider-Man Far From Home, so Hannibal Buress gets a little bit more. They probably should have just left it in so Hannibal Buress got some more, because he's just so subtly, like, hilarious.
Oh yeah, he hits all the Hannibal Buress notes, those deadpan kind of deliveries and humor that he's obviously most known for.
Yep.
And yeah, I quite like that. I quite like the extended interrogation scene.
Yeah,
that
where they're doing like the blueprint, and then he kind of admits that he is Spider-Man, and it's hilarious. So you get the same guy from the movie and from Miss Marvel. So I had more. Oh man, I had more fun with it. And that's the thing. I had more fun. That's it. I laughed a little bit more. It was just a movie that you kind of hold close to your heart, because it's the culmination of 20 years of storytelling, essentially, kind of delved into one. You just try to have some fun. That's all we can kind of ask for. I don't think some aspects of these movies are supposed to be just dissected intently like a Shawshank Redemption would. I just don't think so. So no, it was cool. It was just cool.
We got another Charlie Cox scene.
I was gonna save it so I can go off. I was gonna mute your mic for a second so I can talk about it. But no, he feels so much like he feels exactly like that Netflix Daredevil. Like, he hasn't lost a step. Like, it's like a NBA player that gets hurt for a little bit and they come back and it's the first game, they just feel good. Like, that's how he feels, man. It's just one of the best castings I've ever seen. Like, this is just because I finished Daredevil season 2 recently, but it's just, he's so phenomenal. It's ridiculous how good he is. So it's just the subtleties. He literally just had one more line where he told Happy to stop sweating. How do you do that? Oh man, it's good. And that's another scene that they probably should have left in, because it kind of rounded out what Happy was doing while they all went to his apartment.
Yeah, there's a lot of moments in the original cut of that first movie where we're like, well, how did this happen? Yeah, like the stuff with the green on his suit.
Right. That's probably in the first half of the movie. That's probably the most integral one I think they should have kept in the movie, because I think I made the point that it feels a little weird that, like, how obviously people like hate him, but this makes it makes me feel more like the world's divided versus like, why does everybody just not immediately hate him right now? Yeah. So like this, it feels more like, okay, so people actually like, they feel like they have an opinion. Like, oh, this is actually a conspiracy theory that's going around. Like, not definitively he's like a villain right now.
Yeah, so the scene, for those of you who haven't seen the movie, is essentially it's just a regular kind of Spider-Man stopping a bank robber or a thief scene, and then he strings the guy up, and you have a number of civilians kind of come across the scene, and they're like, hey, like, you can't be doing this anymore. Like, you're a criminal. For one, for two, you're a kid. The one woman in the shop makes note, like, you're 14. You shouldn't be making these types of decisions on what people do with their lives. And they're like, hey, man, like, get off his back. Like, he's trying to help us.
That scene was hilarious.
Yeah, it was great. And then, because people are coming at him from all sides. And then one person's just like, Mysterio forever, and pegs him with a green paint can. And that explains the green paint that leads him to inverting his suit. When he goes to fight Electro.
Leave it in, John Watts.
Just leave it in, John Watts.
Yeah, just leave it in.
There was, like I said, the movie was already 2.5 hours long. It didn't, I think the one scene I mentioned that probably could have just stayed out was the elevator scene.
Right.
It kind of slows it down a little too much. It's a little comedic, but it still doesn't really land like purposes of leaving it in the movie. Yeah. So you could have cut that out. But otherwise, I did think, a lot of the stuff that they put back in, especially in the first half, kind of helped it. If it didn't help it, it definitely didn't hurt it. Like, you got the scene in the school where they do the 60 Minutes-esque interview with Betty interviewing various main characters in the movie. And, it just, I appreciate stuff like that, because that and the robbery scene, I appreciate stuff like that because it just makes the story feel more well-rounded and more like lived in.
Right.
Like, it leads credence to like the narrative that they're already telling us. Like, that the robbery scene like shows us in one very like succinct like 2-minute bit that like, okay, the city's divided. Like, you don't need to tell us that. Like, that scene just showed us essentially that the city was divided.
Right.
That's all you really need to do.
Yeah, it just makes it feel a little bit more alive. It makes you feel a little bit more connected, and I think it could have been a nice little bridge to add in there. So that's one thing I'd leave in. And I mean, the big takeaway from this version too is they just simply use different takes of things. You can tell, like, there was different line deliveries, and that's movie making 101. Sometimes for directors and actors that you do different takes and you leave some in, you leave some out, because it's not like we only got one take at it. These are professionals, so you can get multiple takes. So some lines were a little different. They were a little bit longer. They were a little bit shorter. Just most of them were longer, obviously, but just differences, subtle differences that you can notice.
We got the monster mash.
We did get the monster mash in the undercraw. That's it.
I was sitting there like, they did use the monster mash.
They definitely did. They didn't have the budget to use it in the first one, but this is more fun. They got all the budget this time.
So I like that. And then all the same beats that I thought held up at the time still hold up here. Willem Dafoe is still great. Like, that wasn't again, like,
he's just so unhinged.
Yeah, just comparing it to, back when we reviewed it the first time, like, is it just a nostalgia thing seeing him again? No, he's legitimately a great and terrifying villain.
Yeah, specifically in the second half. And I mean, during the Aunt May death scene, it's just how uncontrollable, because he doesn't have any, it's just simply like this other personality in him just wants that's it. That's all it wants.
What did I tell you after we saw the movie? Like, how many Marvel villains just are as uncontrolled as he is? Like,
yep.
He just, after he kills Aunt May, he just goes outside and blows up a bunch of cop cars.
Yeah.
For no reason.
He doesn't need to do it. Yeah.
So yeah, he's still great. I mean, that the scene in the apartment building is still one of the most visceral kind of fight scenes that we've gotten in the MCU as far as just physicality is concerned. I mean, it's clear that he's just trying to if not kill Spider-Man, he's definitely trying to provoke him. So right. I really, really thought that held up. I think Doc Ock's inclusion, surprisingly, I think I actually liked it better.
Yeah, it's probably for me, that's probably one of the bigger saving graces of the first half of the movie is simply Alfred Molina from Boogie Nights.
Yeah.
No, I mean, he's acting his butt off in the first half of this movie. And I mean, it's again, just not skipping a beat from 17 years in the past, just feels like the same Doc Ock. It's really rounded. I just enjoy every bit of him on screen because you understand where he was coming from 17 years ago. So it just feels so fluid.
Yeah, I just, I think I was just struck by how much, like I said, I think I enjoyed him more this time around than maybe I appreciated in the first time I had seen it, because I was so, like, sensory overload of just all this stuff coming at me that I was like, yeah, like, he's great, but this time, like, knowing the beats and knowing what's coming, like, I really got to pay attention to, like, what he's doing, and, just the subtle things, like, you can still tell that there's a man in there that's locked behind the control of the device attached to his brain.
Sure.
We grow tired of your questions, boy.
Right.
You're like, oh, like, this guy it's a real Jekyll and Hyde sitch with this guy.
Yep.
Jamie Foxx.
Let's talk about it. Let's talk about one of the things that I had a problem with before, but this time I just don't care enough this time to really just break this down too much.
So see, I don't know how much I should have gone back, honestly, and probably listened to the episode that we did when we reviewed this, but I don't think we hammered home enough just how much of a detraction this character
it's just
is.
a complete 180, because I think when we talked about the Amazing Spider-Man 2, we were like, his Max Dillon was actually a pretty interesting character at the time, and like the Amazing Spider-Man 2 didn't, like, that wasn't the problem with the movie. The movie said, we want to set up 5 different movies in this movie. Like, if they stayed with Spider-Man versus Electro, this all-out super fan of this guy turned evil against him, like, keep that going. This movie did not care one bit about that at all. Jamie Foxx just played Jamie Foxx.
And it works.
It does work. It does work.
Movie.
It's just I just think it would have felt a little bit too outdated for, like, the non-Amazing Spider-Man fans, and, like, they would have felt a little disconnected, but this is just Jamie Foxx being charismatic. So it just that's the reason it works. Yeah. Like, his one-liners are great. They're great. They just make you laugh. That's it. That's all it does. And then he just turns into the villain at the end.
Yeah.
He just turns into the main villain outside of, like, he turns into the main villain of the actual plot of the movie, that, like, you need to get home, versus Green Goblin just wants chaos. That's it.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I think I made the mention to you, would this movie have worked better without Sandman and Lizard at all? Because then you could have...
You're missing some exposition if you don't have Sandman in the movie.
Yeah, Thomas Hayden Church was an exposition machine in this movie. He was. More so than I noticed.
It's real. His lines are so, they feel like 80. I mean, obviously they're 80 because he wasn't there, but they just...
Here's the plot of Spider-Man 1.
Here's the plot of Spider-Man 2. Here's the plot of Spider-Man 3. Reese Fonz, your turn. Here's the plot of Amazing Spider-Man 1. Here's the plot of the Amazing Spider-Man 2.
Let me guess. You go turn me into a lizard.
Exactly. The dinosaur can talk?
Yeah, those two really are not in this movie for any particular reason.
But we love both of them, specifically Reese Fonz. I think Reese Fonz deserves to be on the whiteboard. You saw him in The King's Man? He was having a grand old time in that movie.
He's great in House of the Dragon now.
He is.
As Otto Hightower.
What a name. What a name.
What else do I have to say about the first bit of this movie? Nothing, I don't think. I think we covered pretty much it. And then, like we talked about, that second half of the movie from when it made... From the beginning, I would say from the start.
When his spider sense kicks in, like literally the shot of his spider sense kicking in, and like that dolly zoom to him, that's when the movie completely, in my opinion, turns like, I won't say a 180, I'll say like a 130. Like that's the movie completely flips.
Trick, that sense of yours. You're like, uh-oh.
Yeah.
Quiet, lapdog. Oh no.
We don't need saving. They're gifts.
Man, and then it's on.
It is on WWE Raw for about 10 minutes.
Yeah, it's very evocative of the Spider-Man 1 fight.
Yep. It's brutal. There's just brutality to it. Yeah. Well, the first time you kind of feel in his Spider-Man 2, because it finally feels like Tom himself fighting, and that happens multiple times. I don't know if it's because he has the mask off, but I just love they took the practical approach versus the other ones were, I mean, obviously all CGI. Versus the only exception I make is the Far From Home. Him versus the drones were so good. Like the spider sense realization is so good.
And then the passing of Aunt May is still really heartbreaking.
I think
moment.
that hit me more because I think, again, you were in such this euphoric state. This one hit me even more, that I was like calm for this one, where it's just like, man, Marissa Tomei was given a great performance. And I mean, I think I said, like, there's not one bad Spider-Man. You won't convince me that one of them is a bad Spider-Man. Like, they're all good, and they're some of the best, like, ranged actors. And I mean, we'll get into Andrew, because I think he's got the best range out of all of them, but Tom is just, he really came into his own as like an actor, you know what I mean? Like an actor in terms of, like, emotion. So
yeah, that scene where she dies, you know, transitioning to the scene where he's watching the broadcast,
man,
like, you feel it.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? You feel the, like, he's in a no-win situation.
Yeah.
Like, the person that he loved more than anybody in this world just died, and now he's got to stand there in the rain and listen to the biggest voice in the city basically tear him down.
Right. And and the news broadcast didn't help, some woman died. It's like my Aunt May died. Like, the woman that was raising me my whole life just died. Like, this is the worst day of my life.
Yeah.
And then we transition into it. It happens. The more fun version of the...
It's still great.
It is, I mean...
It's still great. So, it's still surreal.
Oh my gosh. When Andrew comes in, it's just like, he feels so natural, like he was born to play Spider-Man.
Yeah, like I told you, that moment, you know, more than any moment in the movie, seeing him jump through that portal and take his mask off, that's the moment where I'm like, this is the most surreal experience. Like,
yeah, because, like, I mean, we said it before, like, when Endgame happened, it was like, obviously, half of them had movies that were planned for years to come. Like, you knew they were coming back to some capacity, but this was your literal childhood. Like, these movies you watched coming home from school, like,
this was impossible.
It was impossible. The logistics of Endgame were absolutely astronomical, but it's the logistics in the sense of how do you make this make sense?
Yeah, and at least Endgame had a roadmap.
Right. Yeah.
You know, it was ambitious and the scale is outrageous, but it had 20 some odd movies to develop, and you knew this was where we were leading to. And I mean, Infinity War had already done it.
Yeah, because I think this movie, No Way Home, was a different movie before they came up with this idea. I'm almost certain. So, and
this was a pipe dream idea.
Oh my gosh!
Like, people were like, "Oh, imagine if they could get all three of them in the same movie," and you're like, "That would never happen for a variety of reasons." Like that, why this could never happen. And then Andrew Garfield comes through that portal, and you're like, this is
Excuse
real.
Me?
Like, this is happening. Like, this is unbelievable.
Right.
And, you know, we talked about it a ton when we did the review of the last one. He's amazing. He's tremendous.
He's amazing.
He's amazing.
Yeah. You are amazing.
He's tremendous.
He bounces, just any character bounces off of them incredibly.
He embodies that character brilliantly.
It's like, he just genuinely feels like if I were to pick up a Spider-Man comic and, like, read the panels of him talking, that's Andrew Garfield talking to me.
He's loose, he's quippy, but he's not, like, overly quippy to the point where it feels like he's doing a bit.
And then he turns it for the emotional beats, and it's just, you feel every bit of emotion. I mean, hats off to the Amazing Spider-Man 2 for Gwen's death. I felt Gwen's death 100%.
Well, yeah.
You don't get that without an actor like that.
Yeah, you know, when he says, you know, when Tom, they have that back and forth of the school, and he's like, "Don't tell me you know how I feel, because you don't." And Andrew just goes,
"Okay."
Yeah. He's just like, yeah, right. Like, I get it. Yeah. And then he, you know, he is able to talk about losing Gwen and, like, how his voice breaks talking about it. Like, man, it's unbelievable.
Yeah. I will say, so it's funny enough, and it's kind of, this more fun version is where I felt more emotion. That, they should have called it the more emotional version, because, like, you strip away everything, the mystique of the original release in December, and you get to this, and the emotional beats are probably some of the best bits of this movie.
Yeah, and, you know, going back to the scene where they all come together, and Toby comes through, and it's equally surreal.
Yeah.
You know, seeing him return to that role also, and that moment still holds up. I think we had the question last week, like, I'm curious to find out if these kind of nostalgia beats still resonate. They do. Yeah. They still do. Like, seeing the three of them in this movie together is still surreal. Like, it's still, because you can't help but think to all the memories that are associated with these characters, especially Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man. Right. Like, you can't help see him in a Spider-Man movie and not think of everything that he did prior, and you're like, man, like, he's back for this moment, you know, this one time only. And even him, like, you know, has these kind of more subtle emotional moments where he talks about, you know, because when he says things like, "I'm sorry about May," you associate his relation to his Aunt May
Yeah.
and how he would feel, if he had lost
that's a
her.
wonderful point.
Yeah. And then, him talking about the great power, great responsibility.
Right. He's the old sage, and I really like the way they play it. And again, you feel it more this time, especially like that old wise, like, I've been through this. Like, I'm going to let you talk for a little bit, but I'm telling you, like, this isn't just a guy this is you telling you that it's going to be okay. Like, I'm physically telling you that I've lost all of them too, and it's going to be okay. Because what we do is we protect. That's it. And like the lesson he learns and that payoff, that end of that movie, I don't know what it does to me every time I see it. It's just because we talk about the pantheon of superheroes. It's Batman, Superman, and Spider-Man. And like one of those three, you feel that. Like you finally feel the core of like any version of that character. Like the Into the Spider-Verse does this probably the second, the best to this version, but it's like the swinging at the end of all the other Spider-Man movies. Like that's it. It's like, this is finally the culmination of what Stan Lee did all those years ago, finally coming true in the live action.
Yeah, and I love they kind of put Tom and Toby on kind of opposite sides of the morality of it. Because and like the through line is kind of, ever since May's death, like Tom he wants to kill Norman Osborn.
Yeah.
Like even when, the scene where he has the bag full of like parts and he goes, Connors, Dylan, and then he grabs the stuff from Norman and he doesn't say anything. He just he goes, and he puts it down. Because like he doesn't want to cure Norman. He wants to kill him. And Toby is kind of like the reinforcer of like, that's not what we're about.
Right.
He even has the line, we're going to cure some ass.
Yeah. And I mean, the big thing for me for that is specifically it's the other side, because there was it's the first half of it is that. It's like I want to kill him, but the other half is like, why do we do what we do? That's the last thing I think he needed to learn. Like, we're protecting the little guy. Like, that's it. Like, you were an Avenger, you were doing these otherworldly threats, you've got that from other people, but like down to the core of it, like it doesn't, because he's seen it from such a black and white perspective before. Like, this is a bad guy, we take care of the bad guys, said and done. Like, this is people that it's anybody, it doesn't matter who every single last person needs saving. That's what Spider-Man does.
Yeah, and that through line is driven home through Toby kind of reinforcing this idea, and then Andrew kind of telling him the anecdote about how after Gwen died, he tried to go on being the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, but he became more rageful. He stopped pulling his punches and trying to. I kind of do wish somehow that would be expounded upon, because him saying it doesn't quite land, considering when he's in action he's still kind of the same kind of quippy, amazing Spider-Man.
The only thing I'll say to that is you gotta think, even how short it is, you gotta think they were feeling off of each other, and like all that energy was just like, all right, this is the best versions of myself that I'll ever find. Like, even through their flaws, like I'm still finding like the good in me. Like I'm getting reignited. That's why he said he probably needed it. Like, I love you guys. Like, I finally don't need to feel rageful, because I just saw what this kid had, like the kid version of me just had to go through, and like, look at like, and then the older version of me said, it's okay, like I'm gonna take some of that for myself. And then
he gets kind of that quasi redemption when he saves MJ from falling, which again, it's still a moment that hits. It's another moment that a lot of people had predicted as happening in that movie long before the movie even came out. That was a moment that people thought might happen, and it did. That's a good case of kind of fan servicey moments paying off in a really great way, and that's in due part because of him and how great he is in that moment. Like this, we talked about at the time, the subtle reactions when he catches her and realizes that like he saved the girl this time, is really great. And then, I guess the other thing is that we got a little extended scaffolding chat. Yeah. And it was just felt like we're just going to put the cameras down and let you guys talk.
Yeah. I gotta imagine most of that was just them, just trained actors, especially the two older ones, just acting. That, because they were talking the most out of them. They just let them go off. That's it. Just be Spider-Man for a little bit, and I gotta imagine just keep the cameras rolling. We'll have a little fun.
Yeah, everything that Andrew Garfield was saying
Doesn't
felt
matter.
so
It does
natural.
not matter what that guy says.
It felt so natural.
Yeah.
It felt like he was just talking. When like the little stutters that he does when he talks.
I love the case though. He's just like, Toby's just like, you look at all these things and you're just like, wow, incredible. And he's just like, it's just in case the Mondays. It's just a Monday.
And then that the ending kind of battle sequence, I think, still hits. I love the hero shot of the three of them landing.
Because again, it's absolutely just surreal that this is a thing that we're actually looking at. Like your middle-aged Spider-Man, like for me specifically, like my literal young childhood Spider-Man, like my Spider-Man when I was formulating like my opinions, and then like the new age in-universe Spider-Man are all together. Like it doesn't make sense that this is a real thing. Like movie and like human logic is telling you that this is impossible, and then it's possible.
Yeah, because as we get older, we kind of understand the logistics of movie making and movie studios and contracts, and particularly in the case of Andrew Garfield, how badly things can end when it comes to your role in a property like this. Like there aren't a ton of, well, I mean, there's success stories, but there's also a ton of flame outs, a ton of falling outs.
Warner Brothers knows all about flame outs. I mean, Marvel itself knows about flame outs, and like not recently, but they were built on a flame out. So
yeah, I mean, Star Wars also, when you look at kind of what's gone on with John Boyega and Oscar Isaac, like it sounds great to be put in these positions of where you're portraying a superhero, you're playing these well-known properties, but it's if it doesn't go the way you envision it,
this
isn't
really going to go the way you think.
It's really hard, especially when we talked about the Amazing Spider-Man, kind of the fallout of what happened with Andrew Garfield and Sony, and how he was possibly transitioned to the MCU and then not. And then
didn't he find out that that's the way he found out he wasn't getting the movie? He found out that Tom Holland was casted. Like, what a horrible way for that to happen. But time reveals all, and this was all for a bigger plan for him.
Yeah, and he comes out, in my mind, obviously Tom Holland's the one that's going to continue on as Spider-Man, but as far as like stock raising, I don't think anyone's stock rose higher coming off this movie than his did.
What do you mean Thomas Hayden Church's stock didn't rise as Sandman? You don't want that Sandman solo project? I forgot the Vulture was in Morbius. That has nothing to do with anything, but
yeah, I don't think anyone's stock. I mean, that's all literally anyone could talk about after that movie came out, was like, God, I didn't realize how good Andrew Garfield was as Spider-Man.
I remember you can ask anybody I know that I was singing before this movie came out.
We both were.
You don't understand, like,
we were both like, he's good. He's really good.
That's Spider-Man. Like, that's it. Like, he does all the things that Spider-Man does. Not that the other two don't, but like, he feels it the most because it's natural, it's organic.
Yeah, and he showed it off. Yeah. He showed it off in this movie. I think both of us at the time had said that we think it's a surefire thing that he's getting another movie. Do you still feel that way?
I'm like 60-40, 64-40 against. The 40 against is more of, I don't think people, again, so this is even going further, like, people didn't understand how good of a Spider-Man he is. I don't think people realize how, like, special of an actual talent of it. Like, I think he's, like, a generational talent actor. Like, he's supremely anything he's in. I mean, you look at Social Network, Under the Banner of Heaven. I mean, for God's sake, he was nominated for an Oscar this year. An Oscar that maybe they should have rigged for him to win after the incident.
For a musical.
Yeah, for a musical. And we found out he can sing out of nowhere. That's something I listened to that soundtrack once a week, and like, that's not a lie. Like, he's just so talented, it's ridiculous. So I don't know, the 64 is, I mean, the man has just once you hit the bottom, you can only go up. So he can, like, I feel like he needs to finish. There's something that's still there that needs to be closed out. Like, you don't need to do this Logan-esque style for, like, but in the vein of Spider-Man. It doesn't need to be dark and gritty, but give him a proper send-off.
My only question about it, and it's not even, has nothing to do with him. It has everything to do with them, the studio, because, I mean, we had our laughs with Morbius, but there's no denying that they fumbled the bag when it came to it felt like maybe they did have some type of magic that they could capture with that version of Spider-Man again, and I'm just not sure they can now.
Yeah, it's just the studio's a little questionable. I mean, take the Venom movies for what you will. They're just, again, they're not meant to be consumed, like, critically. Like, I just don't think so. So, The Amazing Spider-Man, however, like, it could be. Like, there's some bits that could be. So, you gotta just get the right people behind it, and they need to understand what this is. Like, you can't just go in there and be like, all right, we're just going to throw any writer at it, just have some fun, like, he'll carry the movie. You can't do that, because that's what happened in The Amazing Spider-Man 2. And this is when you thought you had a plan. Like, now this is, like, free reign, so just, you have to think about closure. Like, there's things he needs to end in his universe. Like, what I want it to feel like is how the Spider-Man PS4 game feels. Like, that's where he should end, is what that feels like. Because that's, to me, the most accurate version of Spider-Man over, like, outside of a comic over a prolonged period of time, is the Spider-Man PS4 game.
Yeah, I agree. And then, the ending is still great with the fight between Tom and Goblin.
Just throwing hands.
You can feel it. Like, you feel the rage within the battle, like within him. Because Goblin obviously is just taking it, and he's just laughing and cackling like,
"Yep,
you're doing exactly what I want you to do."
Yeah, give in to this. Like, because it's the antithesis. It's the great power. Like, look at all this power. Like, you can conquer with all this power. You don't need to protect people. Like,
yeah, well, Goblin says it to Electro in the penthouse. Like, we're gods. Gods don't need permission, or whatever the line is.
Yeah.
He's not just speaking to Electro there. He's speaking to everybody, including Spider-Man. Like, we have these gifts. They're gifts. They're not things that need to be taken from us. And why should we let them be taken away? We should use them. And that's exactly what's happening at the end. Like, you're seeing Tom be consumed by it, and then tying back to him and Toby kind of being on opposite sides of the moral battle. They become literally on opposite sides when he steps in and stops him from impaling Norman on the glider. And then, you have it's still a weird beat to me with Goblin stabbing him.
Yeah, it's either they should have killed him, or they should have just never done it. He should have just put the glider down, and that was it.
Because it's a dramatic beat that feels like he's dying.
Right, yeah. And if you're gonna do it, then do it. If you're gonna go for it, then just go for it. Because he said in the movie, like, he worked things out with MJ, like, everything happened, but it probably would have, like the diehard Raimi fans would have probably been like, well, is this it? Like,
riot in the theaters. Yeah. So that's a bit of a half measure moment that I would say either do it or don't have it at all.
This is the big part of the third act that just. The logic just gets thrown out the window at some point.
Well, we didn't even talk about the Doctor Strange stuff, but we've litigated that, I think, enough.
Yeah, we talked. Yeah, it's just the first. Cool. Like I said, Doctor Strange is the worst. He's just the absolute worst. He hasn't learned any. And I thought, and that was one of my things with Doctor Strange too. Like, I thought he was going to learn more lessons in that movie, because usually that's what the second movie in a trilogy does: is you get the crap beaten out of you, and you learn a lesson. Like, I don't think he's learned too much of a lesson still.
Yeah.
Because he read the Darkhold, and he's just cool.
They'll do it.
Yeah, he's got the third eye. He's got Charlize Theron. Life is good.
Life is good for Doctor Strange.
Life is great. That's it. But I don't know. But yeah, what the heck was anything in that third act?
They needed a way to tie it up.
So, okay, can I ask questions, or should I just not think about it? Because am I contradicting myself for being, I shouldn't think about it too much, but I'm thinking about it too much?
I guess it depends on what the questions are, I suppose.
My first question, are they going back to die still?
I guess how you could say it is they kind of return them to, like, the moment where they're, like, in the midst of, maybe not in the midst of, but, like, right before they're about to, like, have their punch up. And then, Spider-Man, whoever's there, realizes, like, oh, they're not them anymore. See, now you're going to send me into a tailspin.
Yep.
My question about that is, take Doc Ock, for example.
Yeah.
So he goes back, and he's fixed. But Norman Osborn's still dead. Or is the timeline, like...
What, right, that's the big thing. Like, does the timeline change now?
It's like everything altered.
Right. This doesn't make any sense.
Because, like, by the time he's fighting Flip Marko in Spider-Man 3, both Octavius and Osborn are dead.
But then, again, even to go farther, didn't they have the whole line about, like, people are coming here, like, and they're gonna go back to die? But then Sandman never died. He just went into the wind. That was it?
Yeah.
Or maybe they didn't give the line. I think he said some of them, not
Some
all
of them, yeah. I think he does say some of them.
Because Lizard's just Lizard.
Yeah.
The dinosaur.
Tell me, Max, do I die?
Is that some kind of magical tree monster? It's just a regular. It's just a tree, man.
Let me ask you this: are those your Legos? Why did he ask that?
It doesn't matter, man. Jamie Foxx was just Jamie Foxx.
There's no payoff.
The Lego subplot just never gets paid off. 0 out of 10 movie.
Time the A and the B plot. Nice.
She's so good as She-Hulk.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess the easy thing for me to say is it doesn't matter.
It does not matter
because it's never going to get revolved.
And it's not real.
Yeah, and it's not real. A, it's never going to get resolved. B, it's not real. Like we're never going to go. We're not going to get a Tobey Maguire one shot of what happened to everybody after it. That's it. It's a loose end that's never going to get tied up.
Yeah.
Deal with it. Is basically what the deal is.
Yeah, because I feel like people were talking about more the fact of how does Tom's like Spider-Man forgetting. I was like, that's easy.
We kind of find out in the post-credit scene.
Yeah, that's much more easy to me. Like that one's just like I explained it. Like if I didn't see you. And, like, if I knew you and then I got my memory erased of you, like, and I saw you, it's just me re-meeting you for the first time. Like, you would still have, like, all your records, like, everything would be in there. People would just forget that they ever knew you.
And we get a little bit of that in the new post-credit scene. Right. So, in lieu of the Multiverse of Madness trailer just playing at the end of the movie, which, in my mind, should have never happened.
Yeah, just
It should have just been this. Yeah. Whatever this is.
They should have probably... No, they should have left it, because it was just a cute, like, this is it. Yeah, this is the new status quo.
Yeah, I think we should do away with doing trailers as a post-credit scene. Yeah. I think full trailers as a post-credit scene. Let's not do that. So what we do get is kind of your senior year in review of the graduating class, and Betty Brant is walking us through basically Spider-Man Homecoming and Spider-Man Far From Home, essentially is what she's doing, and you do see Peter Parker in the class pictures, but his face is obscured, or like there's some reason why he's not in the photos, and that's basically what the situation is. Right. He was there, but just no one knows.
Yeah, nobody remembers him.
Nobody remembers. Like, basically, it's the Men in Black thing.
Yeah.
Like they still have these experiences with him, but because magic, they can't recall that he was there.
Yeah. But if they meet him again, he's not erased from the timeline. He still was born, lived his life. They just can't remember it at any point in time.
Because magic. Like, it's not...
Magic with a kick.
Yeah, there's not a scientific explanation for it, because it's literally magic. It's literally like... These memories of Peter Parker have been removed from everyone's minds, and he's just that's him. It's like seeing a person in the supermarket, and you're like, God, that person looks familiar.
Oh, I'm glad you said that. The epilogue to this movie, so I'll encompass everything into it. So the diners or the donut shop scene combined with the final swing, like. My God, did I feel it? I felt it. Like, I felt every bit of that. Like, his interaction with MJ. My favorite part about Zendaya's, like, arc as a character from Homecoming to this is, like, you feel that Peter's rubbed off on her, because, like, she even dresses differently by the time she gets to No Way Home. Like, you can feel, like, his goodness and, like, his lightheartedness is rubbing off on her to have her to get to, like, the middle of the pack of, like, there is hope out there, and like I met my hope right here, and then it just hurts even more the fact that he can't have that.
And they have that kind of supermarket moment where he leaves the donut shop, and they linger on her, and she, like, you can see like the wheels are spinning, like that felt super familiar to me, but I don't know why.
Man, yeah, their relationship is really good. It's
great.
Yeah, it's like it's almost on par with Emma and Andrew. So man, it hits so hard when you just see him. It's just the close shots of both of them are just very telling of their situation, and Tom sells it so well. And man,
and I love, there's none of these things are spoken either, so it's great. He has this whole thing planned out of what he's gonna say, gonna try and like jog her memory basically, but like then he sees how happy she and Ned are, and he's like I really want to get in the middle of this again,
And it's such a smart setup for what I'm probably thinking Spider-Man 4, because I think the new trilogy of Spider-Man is going to be much more accurate, so that people stop losing it at every turn. Like, now you're going to get your new best friend. Like, you had you had Ned Leeds before. Now you're probably going to have Harry Osborn. You had MJ before. Now you're probably going to have Gwen Stacy. Like, you're going to get these things, in my opinion. Like,
I think so too. Yeah.
All these things are going to happen. So it just feels like this is like, that's why this is one of the most satisfying endings to a superhero movie I've ever seen. Like, Logan had one of the most satisfying endings I've seen. Like, this Avengers Endgame, like, they just feel like complete arcs for characters are ended.
Yeah. So, all in all, obviously we still have our issues with the first half, but the second half is still super strong.
Yep.
Still holds up. Still some incredible performances. It's Tom Holland's best performance, as Spider-Man. And all in all, I think it's still really great. That's basically my takeaway. It's a fun movie. It's just a fun movie that you're just supposed to just enjoy it, man. Just enjoy it for what it is. Yeah. So, what more needs to be said?
No, we've already said everything. 3 is the magic number.
Yeah. And I guess it leads to the larger conversation, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm going to sound super hypocritical for what I was saying in there. But, I mean, again, it doesn't matter. So, yes, I felt nostalgic. I felt euphoric watching that movie. But there's something... There's a other side to the coin about all that. The other side to the coin is like it's really like how we consume media as a whole now. Music, movies, television shows, sports, like everything is kind of under this banner, but movies are just something that feel like they're really being hit like hard. So Quentin Tarantino said something and I couldn't get it out of my head. And this is when Top Gun Maverick was coming out. He might have had this before, but he had this idea that, like, when we were making movies in the 70s and 80s, we were telling stories. Like, we were telling full-out stories and, like, characters were being developed. Like, you talk about, the 80s episode is a perfect example that we had. Like, those characters that we were talking about, there's a reason why they're some of the most recognizable characters without them coming from a different source material. Like, they were made for movies and, like, they're iconic for that reason. He made this argument that, like, nowadays we're telling situations. Like, it's short, quick things that are happening that will not stay with you. And that was one of the things that I'll take away from this movie that's a negative. Like, after this movie was over, like, it didn't stay with me a lot. Like, the fact that the thing happened, yes, but the story of it didn't stay with me too much. Like, the outside of the very ending, because that's, like, a core comic book character that people love, it stayed with me, but the full-out, like, feeling of a movie didn't stay. You parry that with Top Gun Maverick, that's a movie that stays with you because that feels like a story was told to me. Like, not just a situation of a thing happening. It felt like a full character arcs for multiple characters in a story that needed to be told.
And I think these two movies in particular are kind of good reflections of the point you're making, because they both are kind of built on a similar concept. Mm-hmm. Insofar as we're gonna revisit things that you're familiar with and things from the past, and we're going to tell a new story. Spider-Man No Way Home did it and made that the story. Mm-hmm. Say what you want, whether that's a positive or a negative, that's what it did. That's why I think the story probably doesn't, feel as memorable, because the story essentially is, look at this thing that we did.
Right, yeah. It's not really, it's more, because also for this, you do need to, like, to make my point about how much I love the very ending of this movie, you do need to put it all together with the 3 movies versus Top Gun Maverick is its own movie in and of itself. Like, if you told that movie, it could be taken as this old gunslinger.
It doesn't have to be set in the quote-unquote Top Gun universe.
Yeah, like, like, that movie does a good job of, you don't need to see Top Gun. Like, they show you pictures of Goose, they show you scenes of Goose from the past. Like, they take care of all that stuff. They say this is his son, and now this is a story about a couple of things. This is a story about him having to come to grips with, like, him holding his son back and not wanting him to fly, and sending him on this mission where he can possibly die and the same fate can happen to him that happened to his father.
Yeah. Like I said, Spider-Man No Way Home is kind of built upon the idea of look at this thing we did, whereas Top Gun Maverick is bolstered by that same concept, but not made by that concept. Right. It's bolstered by the fact that it is this successor to Top Gun. Yeah. But that's not why the movie is being made.
Right. So, so you talk about modern movie making and these ideas. Like, I think I heard someone make the point, like, the last good year for, like, movies before we're hitting this, like, pendulum of, like, going back and forth between good projects. And it was 2016 was the argument. That was the last year. Moonlight, La La Land were, like, the big ones. Like, 2016 felt like the last year of, like, cinema, like, pure movie-going cinema where characters were given to you and, like, these experiences were given to you. So I love love this argument that I saw on TikTok. I can't remember when it was like a year ago, but it was this argument about the movie star, like the idea of the movie star versus the social media star now, and like that one's replaced the other, because the argument was before 60s, 70s, 80s, even before and a little bit after. Like for me, when this stopped happening, it felt like 2013-ish is like 2012, because that's when I was in high school. Like it felt like it was ending, and like the social media stars were starting to rise, the YouTube stars were starting to rise. Specifically, you had Tom Hanks, like you had these titans, but like the thing that they were doing, it's like in music too, you had Michael Jackson, you had Prince, like you had David Bowie, like you had all these, like in their field, like they were the celebrities. Like they go to the basketball games, they go to the restaurants, they shut down city blocks. Like it was the movie stars, the people that you are going. And also there's no social media, so like you're going to these movies and like this is, you don't have other people's opinions being thrown at you. The only thing that you're with, and like my huge thing, like this is what I really wanted to get at with the current state of movie going. I feel like I hate to use the Joker line, like as a society, like we've really kind of took away like the thing that like makes me love movies, like in like turn for, we need to overrate, like we need to dissect every last single bit. Not to throw anything at like CinemaSins, but like CinemaSins does that. Like their whole channel is predicated on picking at the littlest things, and I think people took that aspect too seriously.
Yeah,
like,
because they do it in a joking manner. Yeah,
but like people do that. So I told you, Nope is a good example for the modern day. I don't care what anybody says. 99% of the population right now could not go make Nope if they even tried their hardest.
I'd be willing to bet it's even a smaller percentage of that. Like people, I don't think people realize what a brilliant mind Jordan Peele has.
Yeah, but like they'll mistake that. Like I've seen people being like, this movie's so stupid. Like just because it didn't resonate with you, that's one of the best looking movies I've done. Hoytema did, like, I don't understand how he differentiates the different movies he's on, because they look so sharp, but they're like, he's worked with Nolan, Spike Jonze, Jordan Peele recently, James Gray for Ad Astra. Like his movies look so incredible, but they're different. Like again, so like my big thing I'm trying to get at is like, we taken so much stake out of, like, think of it's 1985 and you're walking into the theater and you see Back to the Future. You're not having social media telling you logic this, logic that. All you're doing is you're sitting there and you're falling in love with Marty McFly and Doc Brown. You're falling in love with the story of this kid that just went on a journey. That's it.
You don't have like, you know, social media. First look at the DeLorean and the new Back to the Future movie.
No, you're just going there with wonder, like genuine wonder for what movie going can do to you. You look at movies, like you look at what Spielberg did in the early 80s, like after he came out with Jaws, you go to Indiana Jones.
Because back then you're getting what? A trailer?
And you got to see that trailer in the theaters. And again, so this is another piece to it, like the actual theater going experience. Like the first part was more of like how we consume movies, I think is so misconstrued now. Like we're losing so much of the love for it because we need to pick at everything and make sure everything makes sense. Like that's why we're falling out of love with everything, because of like so quickly. And like the stories that you're like, we want new things. People are telling you new things, but you're so conditioned to be like, I'm going to go just see one type of movie. And this is my baseline. And even if I hate that baseline, and MCU fans are getting to that now, where they hate the baseline, they still won't go see the other stuff because it's not what they love. So the other side is like the actual theater. So obviously Top Gun Maverick was like probably one of the greatest theater experiences I've had. But another one was an unexpected one, was Everything Everywhere All at Once, where like you were finally enthralled by the story of this, like, and you just had this feeling. Like the best thing about that movie is how personal it feels for somebody that most like people don't look like. Like it's also an interesting perspective to take, because you talk about a multiverse story, you're probably going to see a white guy for like 9 out of 10, but this is the 10th one, and it's like you're following Michelle Yeoh through the multiverse. Like this is incredible, like the thought process behind it, and like the inception of these ideas. But you finally, like, I finally felt people just sit down and just not think about every last little piece of logic that's coming out. And I mean, it's a two-way street, because that's also what the studios are giving back to us. Because you got to think, to some extent, like, they probably got to like the fact that they don't have to try as hard as they used to have to try to get people to fall in love with these characters.
Yeah, I mean, the thing with Everything Everywhere All at Once, and as going to that, like, people not thinking too hard about it, is because it's not part of a larger story.
Yeah, right.
You know, that the problem that the MCU seems to be running into is everyone wants to be like, well, what about this?
Yeah.
What about this? What about this? What about this? Instead of just enjoying things, you know, for what they are at the moment that they're being given. I think that's one of the things that gets overlooked about the early iterations of the MCU movies, is nobody really cared how Captain America, the first Avenger, related to Thor, or how Guardians of the Galaxy related to Avengers. Like, nobody seemed to care then, but like now it's like everyone's so focused on these little things. Like, why isn't anyone talking about this thing from the Eternals? Why isn't anyone talking about this? Why isn't anyone talking about this?
Like stuff we're guilty of.
Yeah, but just take the stories for what they are. Just take the stories for what's being given to you. Like, that's why, you know, as cool as it was, you know, with the Ms. Marvel finale, like the mutant thing, as cool as that was, I almost kind of wish they hadn't have done it, because that's all at the end of it. That's all anyone wanted to talk about.
Right. Versus like the beauty of what episodes 4 and 5 were, like just how like hard they hit, especially episode 5, like that journey into the past, like to the point where like people were like, this is like the worst episode, and like I started to question why people thought that was the worst episode, because they're not in the MCU in that episode. That's why I think people didn't like it.
Yeah.
But I mean, the elephant in the room is Disney in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. They genuinely changed the way we consume movies. Just how social media changed the way the world goes. Like, they are the social media of of movies. It's like, that's it. So everything needing to be connected, like, and I love some connections. They're cool, but I mean, at the end of the day, for me, like, as much as I'll spew on here, like, I don't care. Like, the movies I was formulated on were like I hate to be the Martin Scorsese of this, but like I love those like 70s and 80s movies of like an undercover cop doing something, or like like Back to the Future, like this kid that just went on this hero's journey through time. Like, those are so cool to me. Like, those will never get like taken out. And like, I feel like nowadays, like they felt like movies back then felt like they were much more of like, they didn't feel like as much product of their times. You feel it obviously because the technology is different. That's the biggest tell you can always have. But like, now it feels like everything needs to be connected to what's happening in 2021, 2020, 2022, like right now. Like, they need to get in there, like the sayings, whatever. Like, they don't feel organic. It just feels like writers trying to be smarter than the audience, and it's just not working.
Yeah, they don't feel organic, and they don't feel wholly original either. You know, that's, you know, even the Marvel movies kind of follow a similar formula, despite even the differences can only go so far within the confines of that universe, which is why I think a movie, you know, going back to Top Gun's such a great thing to have out right now, because it feels like such an anomaly. Yeah. In the time that we live in.
It feels like a classic movie that came out in the present day.
And then, you know, going even further back, like I think Avatar did this also. Yep. It was something totally independent of whatever the hype was at the time, whatever like the popular thing was. It was such a detraction from that, and it just told this wholly original thing that people gravitated to. And back then, that was also an anomaly. Yep. You know, people who were like, why is this movie making $1 billion? And I think, you know, you and I have talked about the unbelievable staying power of Top Gun, much in the same way that we likely would have talked about Avatar at the time. Like, how is this happening?
Yeah. I mean, it's just different things that go into movie making. I mean, like, you want to talk about these huge set pieces, cool, but like, just like the score for that movie, like when the habitat's getting like all out destroyed, like those are the things I remember from movies. Like, I guess Back to the Future is the movie I keep going to. Like, all the subtle moments and the smaller moments, that's how we connect to characters. So like, that's where it goes. And like this full out like journey and the story that we're telling, that's how you connect to it too. And it's just like, it's like a teetering line of like the believable and the unbelievable. But like, I think what classic movies used to do is like, it's the feeling that like this is something I can't do, but I can see somebody doing this, versus now it's like anything is possible, so it doesn't matter. Like, it feels cheap now.
And, the funny thing is there's a film franchise in existence that has walked the borders of both realms, and that's Star Wars.
Yep.
Star Wars started out as this new concept, new idea from the mind of George Lucas, and has since morphed into this Marvel Cinematic Universe-esque kind of thing. And you can see now people have more issues with it than they did back then, because it's not wholly original anymore, and everyone wants it to be part of this whole.
Right.
And instead of it just being its own thing, that's part of the brilliance of starting the whole franchise on episode 4. Making you feel like this is a thing that's already existed,
right,
but it's a brand new thing. That was always the brilliance of it to me. Like, starting episode 4, A New Hope, you're like, well, what happened to episodes 1, 2, and 3?
Yeah.
It doesn't matter.
Yep.
It doesn't matter what happened to 1, 2, and 3, because we're showing you 4.
Right. And those feel like full out developed stories too. They don't feel like things that are just happening like consecutively. Like, Episode 5, I mean, is one of the greatest movies that's ever made. It's for a reason that movie's so incredible, because, again, to your point, like, it didn't matter what happened in 1, 2, and 3. You just needed the mystique of what those movies were, because something happened to get to this point. And that's development. Like, that's a story. Like, how did we get from the fall of this Jedi to finding out this Jedi turned into Darth Vader after all this? And on top of that that's his father. Like,
what? He said what?
Oh no, you haven't seen it, have you, mate? But yeah, that's just, and I mean, another thing too is these directors. So you want to talk about these classic directors? These directors. So I mean, you can go. Let's just go your Mount Rushmore. Let's just throw the people that talk about it openly: Spielberg, Scorsese, Quentin, and probably, I don't know, Spike. We'll use those 4. Like, those are people that have talked about the state of movie going. I mean, Quentin's the one that talks about it vehemently, because, I mean, that's the other thing too. Like, he also is like somebody that people are like, you need to stop talking sometimes, because he's just like, he'll ramble about like the classic way, and like, this is the only way to make movies. Like, that's not true in my opinion too. Like, some of the things I do agree with, like the theater go, like, he's very big on like the theater going experience. He's very big on like like just a little bit of the competitive nature of it. Like, now anybody can make anything, but like, it's not anybody can make anything of quality. Anybody's just making anything, and you can put it out anywhere. And like, that's a good thing and a bad thing too. So, because that's where the hype comes into play. And I mean, Spider-Man No Way Home, like, it was built upon hype. So, yeah, I don't know. They just some of the interviews I've been seeing with some of these older directors that have their careers have been shortened by the new age of movie making too. Their careers have been affected by this. I mean, James Gray, who directed Ad Astra, talked about it. Like, the movies that are being made now would never get made today, like made back in the day. They're never getting made now, just because what people are told they want to see.
Yeah.
And what people like, I forget, it was some podcast today. I think they were talking about The Sound of Metal, and the guy's like, I don't want to see a movie about a deaf guy that drums. Like, that's boring. I want to see a movie with all the Avengers in it. And I was just like, why can we not have both?
Right. Exactly.
That's what I think one of the biggest issues is. It's like, it's being like deaded. Like, I think the attraction, like, it was like this false attraction. It was like this monkey's paw that all the streaming services use. They were like, all right, well, now we're going to give all these content creators chances to shine. But guess what the first thing when I opened up Amazon was? It was Rings of Power was the first thing that popped up. Like, we're going to put all the stuff that we said we were going to talk about for all these creators in like 2016, 17, when all these streaming services were getting like popular. We're like, we're going to talk about, no, they didn't. They were like, we're going to put it to the ground and like barely promote these other things.
Yeah. And then just say, like, well, it's there.
It's there. Yeah, you should have known about it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, we're in an interesting time. We're definitely in a metamorphosis of the industry, and that's why stories like Top Gun Maverick are so intriguing, because it feels like such an anomaly, and, why I'm so looking forward to what Avatar does at the end of the year.
Yep.
I think that's going to be very telling.
Yeah, and I mean, we have Venice is going on right now, Venice 79, so it's film festival seasons upon us right before we get to Oscar season. It always happens end of summer, so we're going to get, I think, TIFF soon, and that's where I believe Devotion with Jonathan Majors and Glenn Powell is going to debut. Like, we have all these incredible movies, and I mean, again, the thing too is that these studios are kind of holding some of these things from us, and I don't like the mystery that they have around some of these film festivals. I don't like how exclusive they feel. They to me, they do feel very like only the certain amount, like certain people are supposed to see this, where again it's what these big studios are doing with like these superhero properties. Like these studios are also doing with these like other indie projects and still big name directors for big projects with big actors, but like they're kind of holding it out from us because they're like, well, nobody's going to care anyway, so we're going to make sure only a certain amount of people see it. Like wide release I mean, money's the thing, man. Yeah. Money's gonna revolve around every single aspect of this.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, look no further than all the stuff going on with Warner Brothers. Mm-hmm. When you talk about money talking, mm-hmm. like that's
yeah. You know, you want to hear something cynical? I genuinely believe that some of them at Warner Brothers are like almost a little excited at this "Don't Worry, Darling" drama, because guess what that's probably going to do? It's probably going to get more people to see the movie. So they're like, it is what it is. Same thing with Ezra Miller. They were probably like, they're causing a lot of trouble. People are probably going to see the movie because of this.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. We talked about that, a few weeks ago about how do you promote the movie? Like the controversy is kind of promoting the movie already.
Yeah.
And you and I both agree, like we would never want to promote a movie that way, but we don't think like most major movie studios. So
right.
Yeah, I agree. That was fun.
Yeah, I got to rant a little bit because
that was a good talk.
Yeah, I love movies. I love movies of all time. You can find good movies and good stories anywhere. You just need to know where to look. And I hope these studios really try to understand. Like Disney's a really interesting conundrum, because if you think about it, what was Disney predicated on in the 40s? Like in 50s, like they were the ones that were telling these animated tales that like of wonder and journey. Like they were telling these, and then Pixar had a good run, and like the 80s, all their animated projects, and then you get to Disney Channel, something for the kids to watch at 8 o'clock. Like we had all these things that we were falling in love with, and like now what they've gotten to is like it feels so far away from that. But I mean, they evolved with the times that were happening. Like all these studios were getting all these people, and then they were like, okay, well, we need to stay afloat. We need to make money. Like make money is the only thing that we care about. We can tell somebody something, but like at the end of the day, this is to make money. Like getting Toby and Andrew in a movie, as much as we loved it and it's cool, it's to make people are going to see it, which means more money. So it's a rarity where like a movie like Top Gun Maverick comes out and just like it's making money because it's an actual good movie.
Yeah.
Because I just genuinely don't think that people were like, probably when the movie was announced, they were like, that's exactly what we needed, a Top Gun reboot. They probably weren't thinking that. We're like, I'll never forget when that first trailer came out. I was like, this actually looks incredible because it feels real.
Yeah.
Like, and that's another big thing for the new movies. Like, they don't feel as real as they used to. Even these movies that were heavily relying on CGI, like, I mean, Lord of the Rings Two Towers is a great example of that. Like, that's an ancient, like, fantasy world, and it feels more real sometimes than these new age movies. Like, so, man, that was a good time.
Yeah.
Just watch more movies, and just what I'm getting at is just you don't need to hate everything. Like, you probably heard me on here talking about movies in like more of a loving way than a hating way, because I don't know, the way I was raised to watch movies was not for that. You're supposed to watch them for what they are and like what the story they're telling. Like Miss Marvel does that in the way that it's just like that story might not be for you, but you could still watch it. That's for somebody. Like, that's what, I don't care. That's no agenda pushing. Like, that's been since the start of movies. Like, Luke Skywalker was for somebody. Like, Han Solo's for somebody. Indiana Jones is for somebody. Like, they're all for somebody, and they can span things. Like, you didn't go to high school. Like, Miss Marvel's in high school. Like, some of the things she goes through is what you went through, just if you want to believe it or not. So, yeah, that's how characters are built. So, you really cleared out for me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no, that was good. I enjoyed that.
Yeah.
I enjoyed that a lot.
I can go on much farther about this, but we don't have time for that.
Yeah, I guess the only thing I have left to say is, what have you been up to?
What have I been up to? I finished Daredevil season 2. Did I talk about that last? No, I didn't. I was in the midst of the Elektra arc, and I got to the end of season 2. It's my favorite show of all time. I will say, like, take the hype off. Like, I do understand why it feels a little bit more incohesive in the second half of that season. Like, does feel like a detraction. I think it's because John Bernthal's still there. Like, he's still around, and like, you're trying to delineate between the mystical stuff and like the real world stuff, and also I feel like the mystical stuff doesn't go fully into it. Like, it's not a tease as much as it is like, we don't know if we're ready for this, because where Netflix was at the, like, it was very real. No matter, even Nobu being a ninja in season 1 felt real because it was just an ancient organization, but this is actual like mysticism they're dealing with, and like they wouldn't go fully into it. And I think Iron Fist suffers from that a lot, because you don't believe that any of this is real. Like, you just genuinely
even the human stuff,
it feels worse than Days of Our Lives. Man, Iron Fist. I'm in the show run right now, so I'm in a really big, because I'm in between Doctor Strange and Black Panther, I think, are the 2 movies that are in between. So I'm like in a huge show run right now. So I'm on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. season 4. That's the thing that I'm watching right now. That framework stuff is so good. There's this part where all of them turn to LMDs, and Daisy and Gemma, they think they're both LMDs, and like it looks like a horror movie. Like, they're genuinely in the place, like they're dirty, like they're like just hair's messed up, like they're just like,
it's really good,
rattled, like blood coming off, and then they're like, and the performance that Gemma's giving too is really good, because she's just like, I just watched the man that I love just turn into a robot, so like, I don't care. She's holding the knife up to her, she's just like, I don't care what you say right now, like, you are an element, like, you need to get away from me. So it's good stuff. I'm actually in the framework now, and I'm into Leopold Fitz, aka Goat Fitz. Man, that suit, he's got so much swag, it's crazy.
That's a really good season of television for people who may have jumped off Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Yeah. 4 and 5, man. I don't want to talk about what happens at the end of 5, but there's a reason why, whatever his name, Ian, I can never pronounce his last name, Fitz is such a good character in the MCU. Make it canon. It's all canon now. It doesn't matter what it is. Make it canon.
Yeah. So I watched Rings of Power, the first 2 episodes that came out on Amazon Prime, and man, it's a great looking show. It visually looks on par with those Lord of the Rings movies. The characters are all super interesting. I think the standout for me is, what's the actress's name? I need some like Jeopardy music when I'm doing stuff like this.
Maybe I could just talk about something whenever you do this.
Morfydd Clark, who plays Lady well, she's not Lady Galadriel right now, but she plays Galadriel, and she's definitely the standout for me so far. She, a lot of people who consider themselves lore kind of specialists are upset at her portrayal in this show, because she's very like headstrong and like warrior like and queen like, but like it makes sense, man. Like, when you go back to those original Lord of the Rings movies and you see Galadriel, like, there's power behind. It's like the Yoda thing, like, there's like power behind her. She has this menace, and I just love her mission in this show to start out with, is that she just wants to get rid of Sauron. Like, everyone's telling her like, it's over, the war's over, like Sauron's gone. She's like, no, he's not, and I'm literally never leaving until I go. It's like the definition of on site. Like, she will not rest. They try to send her to like the elven version of Valhalla, like, go live your eternal life. She literally jumps off the boat and swims back to Middle Earth, because she's like, I know Sauron is still out there, and I know I have to get rid of him. And that it's funny applying those through lines to the rest of the Lord of the Rings, where she tells Frodo and company, you have to get rid of Sauron once and for all. Like, that mission for her is thousands of years, because elves live such long lives. So she's great. The show's off to a really promising start, despite the swaths of review bombing because of the representation that people have issues with.
Here we go again.
And
it's the Star Wars way of like rationalizing representation, and literally a galaxy,
and it's like people
of
are
beings
like,
like Jar Jar Binks.
If Tolkien wanted people like this in the books, he would have written it that way. Neil Gaiman had to hop on and be like, look,
once Neil Gaiman gets involved, you're gonna get sunned.
Like, you don't know what you're talking about. Like, Tolkien, was very inclusive and wanted to be, and they're like, you don't know what you're talking about, Neil Gaiman. So you can't win. There's certain people you will just never win over, no matter how good the show is. Like, it doesn't, like, if you're that bothered by it,
don't watch it.
Either don't watch it, or just don't be bothered by it.
Yeah.
Like, it does, like, their skin color has literally nothing to do with their characterizations.
Yep.
Like, they're still whatever race of people they are, just some of them happen to be black. Mm-hmm. That's fine.
Yep.
Like, that's, like, it doesn't change their characterizations at all, and it shouldn't be an issue for you unless you're one type of person. So yeah, I'm really enjoying that. And then the other thing I've been doing is I've been playing The Last of Us.
I've also been, so I did it. I finally did it. I started it. That first 20 minutes,
I told you,
just broke me. Should we spoil a game that came out how many years ago?
So it's almost 10 years old now. It came out in 2013.
Yeah.
So
when Sarah dies, it's just, he said, but sir, don't do it to me.
It's such a great kind of launch point for Joel's character arc, because then that happens and it's like 20 years later and this is where Joel is now.
I was like, I had to take a double take. I was like, did they do that wrong? Or that's literally 20 years in the future. Like, they've been, and what helps is you've lived in that, and makes it feel a little bit more real, because it's like, it's funny like how humans will like adapt to things, and like how things will just like be progressed. Like, they're in this, like, the zombie apocalypse happened, it's upon us, we're living in it now.
Yeah, we're living in the quarantine zone, and Joel and Tess,
we're living in a quarantine zone.
Man, when you go and listen to some of the verbiage, you get real uncomfortable. Real quick.
Yeah.
And then I love the framing of Joel and Tess. They're not heroes. They're not good people.
No, not at all. Not at all.
You know, I know people have their issues with The Last of Us 2 and where that takes Joel's character, but like, it makes sense.
Yeah.
You know, what happens to Joel in The Last of Us 2, it makes sense because he's not a good person.
And that's another thing about this whole movie and storytelling thing in the modern age. Like, again, like, you want people to make the decisions you would make, but that means everybody would be the same as you. Yeah. It just doesn't make sense. Like, that's weird.
That's the cool thing about the Joel character, is he's not a hero.
No.
And even up until the end, you know, I won't spoil it, but he you know, doesn't make the heroic quote unquote decision. He makes the selfish decision, you know, when it comes to the decision he makes at the end of the first Last of Us game. And that's why that character in that story stands the test of time. You know, I've been playing through it and I'm just like, man, this is just a really good story.
Yep.
Like, it's so captivating.
I love how great they are. They're extremely great characters. I mean, it's not in terms of black and white versus gray. It's survival of the fit. You're talking about the end of the world. Like, I don't care who it is. You are going to make the selfish decision 10 times out of 10 in an end of the world scenario. You just will. And
you encounter Bill later on, and Bill has an offhanded comment about the runners and the infected. And he's like, it ain't the infected that scares me. He's like, they're predictable.
Yep.
He's like, it's the humans that scare me. You know, and that's one of the lines in that game that really, among several others that really stick with me, is, you know, it's, the zombies are easy. Like, they're predictable. It's humans that scare me the most.
Yeah.
And he goes, you know better than anyone, Joel. And Joel goes, yeah. And Ellie goes, what does that mean? And Joel just brushes it off, because you don't see that 20 years, but you get the picture painted that he's done some pretty awful things in that 20-year stretch to stay alive.
It's funny because, like, Nope kind of deals with that a little bit. I finally saw Nope.
Nice.
Yeah. Nope a little bit deals with that, because it's the idea of, like, can I spoil Nope? Is that okay? That movie came out, what, like a month and a half ago?
I'll put a tag in the time code.
Right. I mean, you found out that the cloud essentially it's a predator. Like, it's so the big thing with predators, it's like, it's nature. Like, that's what you're dealing with. What the issue is like what people will do if they find something like that. It's always the people that turn out to be evil. Like, I love that through line in most things, that, like, people will always, like, given the chance, people will always make the wrong decision. They just will. So Last of Us is a great example of that. Nope's a great example of that. You can't go make Nope. Stop doing it.
Yeah.
Stop psychoanalyzing everything.
Just playing that game again just makes me excited for this series.
Yeah.
And just seeing what Pedro Pascal and Bella Ramsey are going to do with that.
Pedro Pascal can't miss. He simply can't miss.
That's going to do it for us this week. You can follow us on Twitter at ProjectINF_pod. You can follow us on Facebook. You can listen to the podcast on Apple, Spotify, Google, Amazon.
Your grandma's radio.
Wherever you can find us there.
The barbershop. Kohl's. Wherever you want to listen to it, it'll be there.
If we were on Kohl's.
That would be crazy. You get your Kohl's Cash and the Project Infinite podcast in one. Can we get sponsored Kohl's? Can that be the first one? I don't even want real money. I just want Kohl's Cash.
You can follow us on Instagram.
At the Project Infinite Pod.
Thank you. Next week, we're going to... D23 is happening, right?
Yeah. I thought that was next week.
Yeah. No, wait. Next week?
Yeah.
Next week.
Right, because this coming week... We're doing Umbrella Academy.
Wait. Do you have that right?
Probably not. We're going to talk about it when we get out of here.
It's one of those two things.
Yeah, we got to go, man.
We got to go. Thrones is on.
Thrones is on. Oh, no. Thrones is on. It's time for more Matt Smith.
Oh, man, yeah. So it's going to be one of those two things. So for me, from the...
You're going to give me...
Careful.
You're going to give me a director? You're going to give me Jamie Foxx? What are you going to do? You got to be careful this time.
Man, I might be retreading familiar territory depending on what I did at the end of the last episode, but I'm just going to say the Andrew Garfield of the podcast. The highest honor I could bestow.
That is the highest honor.
I might have done that for No Way Home, but I can't be sure. Doesn't matter. just like Spider-Man No Way Home, what happened to Tobey and Andrew afterwards, doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. Yeah.
So whatever's happening now is the most relevant thing.
Yeah.
So
I'll take it.
Cool.
Specifically Andrew Garfield from that movie, or just Andrew Garfield in general?
Just in general.
He just seems like a wonderful person.
I love that little bit that they did at the beginning.
Oh, yeah.
Where Tom and Toby were like, "We love you, Ran." Great. All right, guys. We'll see you next week. Goodbye.
Peace.